Okay.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our Red Lipstick Talk Patreon live for Facebook and YouTube. So we're going to just give people a few minutes to come on. And Nefertiti and I are so excited. So,
How you doing, Renee?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm
I
good.
see
I'm
you.
in the sunshine, as you can see.
I was just about to say I see you in that sunshine, and I'm jealous because it's sunny out there. Nefertiti's in California right now, and I'm in Rio, and it's a little cool in Rio. So I got my long sleeve shirt on, you know.
Yes.
Um, but we're just giving people a few minutes to come on. But while people are coming on, I am so excited to share that we finally have our Patreon account up.
Yay!
So yes. Um, and I finally learned how to have on the bottom screen going across. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com Red Lipstick Talk. So just to let you guys know about that, while we're waiting for people to come on, we're going to be talking about today about independence, about redefining independence, how to get how to get independence, and we're going to be talking about just some of the things that they haven't taught us about independence.
Mm-hmm.
4th of July, 2nd of July in Bahia. But I want to share, Nefertiti and I were doing, Red Lipstick Talk every Friday at 7 p.m. And our mission, our goal is to have you leave with different resources, different tips, different things. And also on Saturdays, we lead a free meditation, Let's Breathe, every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern
Yes.
Standard Time. So, our Patreon, we decided to start a Patreon account for those of you who want to support us so that we can continue leading the Saturday night meditation for those who are stressed out, need a break, need some support, as well as to continue giving Red Lipstick Talk on Friday nights.
Yes.
So I'm so excited about that.
Yes, Renee, I'm excited as well. So we started this project during the pandemic as a way to reinforce the fact that we do have the creativity, we do have the knowledge to always kind of transform ourselves in the face of difficulty, in the face of challenge, and most possible when we do it together. So I'm really excited, Renee, to be doing these projects with you in partnership.
Yes.
Alone, I'm
Yes.
having a really hard time motivating myself.
And together I have to keep motivating her.
Hey, nobody should know that.
But if you join our Patreon, you will know, because you'll get to see
Yes.
the behind the scenes with our planning and the craziness.
Yes.
Yes. So welcome. As you're coming on, say hello. Let us know that you're here. And I'm excited because today's the 3rd of July, July 3rd, 3rd of July. And we really are just kind of sandwiched in between 2nd of July, which is
Dois
dois
de julho.
julho in Portuguese. And for a lot of you who don't know, dois de julho is Bahia, Salvador de Bahia. Many people know Salvador, but don't know Bahia. But Salvador is a city that's within Bahia. And so that's Bahia's Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the 4th of July is the US Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so because we're sandwiching in between those two, we really wanted to talk and kind of give that history, that just a lot of people don't know, and it's important to be able to share all of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to go out and celebrate on the 4th of July and do your barbecues and all of that, that's fine. You can do that without feeling guilty. It's just being aware of, the truth behind the 4th of July. And I think that's just very important. So we're excited to talk about that.
I mean,
Mhm.
I think it's funny. I think excited to give our take on it. Because when we looked at the calendar and I said, Renee, we're in between 4th of July and dois de julho. Like, I was like, okay, me being kind of anti patriotism in every sense. I was like, oh, this is gonna be hard, but let's do it. Let's show what these days are really about in terms of, you know, Black and brown folks, indigenous people in both countries. Like, what is the story and the narrative there? I think that people who from the U.S. that came to Brazil, and I don't know how many Dois de Julios you've been a part of, Renee, but I've been to every single one since I've been in Brazil. It's a day-long parade.
Well, so I've been quite a few in the beginning. The last 2 or 3 years, I would always travel during the summertime. I was always on family reunions, graduations. So, you know, I've been in the U.S. in June, July, from May to July. Yeah, but in the beginning, we've celebrated a couple. I posted on Facebook.
Yes.
Celebrating Dois de Julho, 2nd of July. That must have been like 3 years ago. I don't know. Or something, I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway,
and it's interesting because Bahia has a different Independence Day than the rest of Brazil, right? Because the rest of Brazil is the 7th of September, Virgo season, my season. So what is that difference between the two independences?
Yes.
The 2 days.
So I think I'll just start talking a little bit more about Dois de Julho, just for folks who might be less familiar with the story. And then we can from there kind of compare how that relates to the 4th, or how it relates to us, more importantly, like both of these concepts, right? So September 7th, in 1822, Dom Pedro, who was the prince son of King João Pedro from Portugal. His dad had left him in charge of Brazil in like a lax way while he went back to Portugal, and was like, watch over Brazil, you know, make sure nobody is out of line. Over that period of time, his son began to be more sympathetic to the nativist Brazilian cause. People who had been born in Brazil, who were of Portuguese descent mostly, wanting to have a separate state. So similar to the US in that they had been descendants of the English and came to a point of wanting to have an independent nation, mostly for financial purposes, right? Having not to pay taxes to the crown, just being able to define in terms of the market as well, like the things that they could have control over. And so then his son, the prince, became more sympathetic. So September 7th, he was like, okay, I declare the right of Brazil to be independent. And from that date, he went to different states and areas with different armies supporting the fight against Portuguese loyalists. So people who were more committed to the crown, who wanted to maintain the crown's power, they went off and fought. So what did that mean in Bahia? Bahia, having been one of the first places that the Portuguese came to and colonized, had a very strong, intense loyalist population and military power, right? So before even Dom Pedro declared anything, Bahia, the different fighters in Bahia had been fighting against the Portuguese for a while. And after that sort of resistance, the king was like, all right, I'm not cool with Bahia. I'm going to send a general that's even more messed up, more violent, to repress people and control people. And so it from 1820 onward, there was a lot of fights, a lot of battalions, and a lot of resistance to the Portuguese domination in Bahia.
And there were some women who were fighting as well.
Yes. So the women who fought in Bahia, there are 3 who were sort of named as the women freedom fighters of that time. There was Maria Felipa. She was a descendant of Africans who had been freed. And she was born in Itaparica, which is an island across from Salvador. And she was a marisqueira. A marisqueira are women who are shellfish gatherers. And she was a very hard worker, and she had managed to lead a group of 200 people primarily women of Afro Brazilian descent and indigenous descent, Tupinambás and Capiuas,
and that's
into a
huge
battle
because
in
it's part of, and that's huge to be a part of this battle to fight for independence. An Afro-Brazilian woman, you know, leading a group of 200 people, you know, to fight. And so you don't hear about this. Yeah, mostly women. And you don't hear about this. And it's interesting because, you know, today in Brazil, I mean, it's so machismo, you know, but you know, when you look at that time in the 1800s, you know, Afro-Brazilian woman, you know, taking leading a group of soldiers, mostly female soldiers, 200 to fight this battle to gain independence. And so you don't hear that. So like similar in the US, you don't hear the different things that, you know, the African American population had, the Black and brown indigenous people. You don't hear that when we talk about Independence, 4th of July or Thanksgiving. You don't hear those things. So it's so important to just to have these discussions because we also we suffer the dehumanization of Black people, you know, and so even Black people within us, we, you know, we're not hearing these stories, we're not seeing these stories, and so we're looking down at ourselves, we're looking down at our women as men or other women, you know, and so I think that this is so important to have these discussions so we can start to reverence other Black and, you know, Black and brown people and see how powerful and resilient we are.
Yes, and that memory is still alive, right? So Maria Felipa, I would say, at least my experience in Salvador, she's kind of equivalent to Harriet Tubman in that way of being a strong Black woman that resisted in these phenomenal ways against repression, right? And what's beautiful to see as well, and what's important about dois julho in general, is how the resistance to the Portuguese was actually a partnership of indigenous and African descendants. And so in that battle, for example, and in others, what they were using to fight people were peixeiras, which is a type of knife to cut fish, and cansação, which are different types of indigenous plants that poison the skin when you touch it. So the Tupis had taught them. So they were using indigenous technologies to fight off the Portuguese, and that shit is badass. And they won. And after they were like,
that is badass.
That is badass.
So, and you know what? When you say that, is like, that shit is badass. Like, we are some badass motherfuckers. And it's like, when you think about it, like in this revolution that we have going on right now, you know, we can do that same thing and use that creativity. Like we could use our creativity to fight off in this, you know, this revolution. It doesn't necessarily always have to be gun for gun. I'm not, you know, but I like saying, like, you know, how you said that, how we use these poisonous plants. Well, the Afro-Brazilians in that time to fight off the Portuguese. So, you know, us as people of color, Black, indigenous, we have to connect to those roots. We have to hear these stories. And I think large in part, this is why they don't want us to hear these stories, so that we're not empowered. So we have so many different things, honestly, at our disposition to be at war, to go through a revolution and be able to win.
Yes.
You know.
So remember her name, folks, Maria Felipa.
Maria Felipa.
Badass, fighting people with fish knives and poisonous plants. Moving on. So we have Maria Felipa. We also have Maria Quitéria. Maria Quitéria was a indigenous and Portuguese descendant of small farmers from like Feira de Santana region. So for folks familiar with Bahia, it's a very rural area. And she had been learning how to farm with her father, but also very aware of the Portuguese's intentions to sort of continue to take over lands that smaller, poorer farmers were trying to work. And so at an early age, she said, I wanted to fight. She dressed as a male to be able to join the army. She joined and she fought for years with nobody knowing that she was a woman.
Wow.
Yeah, so she fought for like a couple years, and she was finally outed actually by her father. because he discovered that she had gone to the army without his permission. But even when they discovered her, so the father went to her. When she was discovered, they were like, her skill in battle is so good, they allowed her to continue fighting as an outed woman. So she's, again, her name, Maria Quitéria. She was a rural, small, poor farmer woman who became a very skilled fighter against Portuguese during this time. Mm-hmm. So she's,
and when you think about it, even here in the U.S., like, you know, I see a lot of people on Facebook posts talking about how, you know, it's always the woman going to battle to fight for the man. And, you know, a lot of women are feeling defeated, and they're like, who's going to take care of us? Who's going to protect us? Who's going to fight for us? We're fighting. But this has been a history for years, for centuries, from the 1800s, where women have been going to war, have been going to battle, you know, for freedom, for peace. And honestly, like, even with my work in Tantra, you know, and I go back to Tantra a lot because, you know, it's all connected. We're all connected. But, you know, we say how women are tantric, and women are very powerful, you know. And so, so that's a thing we have to, you know, I think embrace this power that women have, and this skill that women have to be like, okay, I want to get something done, and I can get it done, you know. And I think that, you know, together we can join together as men and women, you know, and battle together. It would be even greater, I think. Or maybe we just do it all together as women.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, it's just powerful. This is empowering to hear for women, you know.
And I was thinking a lot too of like what made it so clear for them to sort of have this kind of courage and literally act in self-defense consistently, because, you know, this took months and months until finally on July 2nd, the Portuguese general got on the last ship with the little troops he had and went off to Portugal. And just sort of thinking about like, what is it that sort of generated that courage? Is it having a very clear, you know, enemy target? Is it knowing that you have nothing to lose, but only to gain? Or is it like this fact that there's a collective willingness to fight, right? So Dois de Julho has been celebrated as, and why it's so revered in Salvador and Bahia specifically. So it's not celebrated outside of Bahia. It's not recognized as a federal holiday.
Right.
And and why it's so significant for folks in Salvador is because who was fighting and sort of leading the fight against the Portuguese resistance was not necessarily the sons of the elite. It was freed Africans. It was still enslaved Africans because they had made promises to liberate them if they were in battle. So a lot of African slaves and Afro-descendant slaves were actually doing the fighting. It was indigenous folks who did not want to lose their land. And it was small rural farmers as well. So you had like poor and indigenous and Black people doing the fighting. And it was a moment of unified fighting and what came about from that. And so it's a very celebratory day. And who gets revered on that day? So on Dois de Julho, they there was a narrative created that who was actually Brazilian was the person of indigenous descent, right? So they had put the sort of indigenous identity, the caboclo or cabocla, as this identity that was the, you know, the sort of the quintessential Brazilian, had this spirit, had this bloodline, had this heritage. And because the indigenous, you know, historically were who resisted most to the Portuguese. And so that is who is celebrated every year. There's 2 statues that are paraded through the city, through the historical area. They're brought to the main square, left there for 5 days with celebrations, and then brought back to where they're from. So in terms of like inspiring people's movements and people's celebrations, it's become this moment because actually a year after they got independence, they wanted to celebrate this day, and it was the elite celebrating, but, you know, there was a bunch of slaves who had still not been freed, there were a lot of people who were small farmers who had not gotten the promises they wanted. So they actually started a parade that was mocking what the elite Brazilians had said they were going to give them. So every year now, the parade also sort of mocks and criticizes the political disparities or the political injustices in relation to the disparities of different people in Brazil. So it also has that character.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say the similarities to in the U.S.? Because, you know, tomorrow's the 4th of July. And what are some of the things that you have noticed with that?
Yeah. So I think that the 4th of July celebrates, right, it celebrates the Declaration of Independence. But again, it's independence for who? And, you know, it was very clear in the Declaration that it excluded slaves, it excluded indigenous peoples, and it was a Declaration of Independence for, you know, white European descendant citizens. And so I wanted to read an excerpt, if that's okay with you, Renee, and our audience, from Frederick Douglass's historic speech that he made. He was invited to speak at a 4th of July celebration. And his speech every year is recited in different spaces, different groups. It's, you know, transformed into these really beautiful film pieces, all kinds of stuff people are doing online. And I just wanted to read a piece that to me sort of speaks to what it means to me and folks of color. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce, with all the emphasis I can command, everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse, I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me than any man, whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who is not at heart a slaveholder, shall not confess to be right and just. Frederick Douglass. So, yeah, I share that because I feel like it's completely still relevant. You know, I think this moment that we're in, you know, in the movement for Black lives, in the movement to humanize people and to stop the dehumanization of Black lives, we're still fighting that today. And so I think him flipping the 4th of July as a day of declaring his fight for that and also not excusing that is what it's about for me today. Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think that, you know, as we're talking about this, our theme for is redefining independence. And so those of you who are listening to this, like, what comes up for you, like when you heard that excerpt from Frederick Douglass and hearing about, you know, these different things, like, you know, the women leaders and how in Bahia, Salvador, you know, the Black indigenous people were, you know, basically forced to go to war and was promised that they would have their freedom. But it's very similar because you see that in the U.S. as well. A lot of times who's on the front lines in the military in the U.S., it's Black people, you know. Yeah. When they go to the schools, it's like they give that ASVAB test and it's like automatically who are they trying to enlist in the military? It's the young Black people at 17 years old. And you know, they force us in there in the military, saying, oh, they'll pay for your schooling. You know, they promise you all of these different things so that, you know, we can get in and join the military, you know. So it's difficult.
Yeah,
It's a
that's a good
challenge.
point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And you know, you brought up Harriet Tubman as being kind of, you know, similar to Maria Felipa. I do want to read Harriet Tubman's the famous quote, because I really, really, really like that. If I hear the dogs, keep going. If I see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after me, keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep going. If I want a taste of freedom, keep going. Harriet Tubman. And you know, that's just it's so important, and it's a good time right now because of what we're going through, to really reflect and think about independence, think about freedom. Because I've been saying for so many years, like, people, we think that we're free, but we're not truly free. We're not truly free. And if you think about it, like, even just in just a small little things, like with Facebook, with Instagram, we're being censored. And I see this more because of my subject, because I work with sexuality. Like, you know, they keep censoring us and certain things you can't say, especially when we're trying to empower people. But then you can see racist people making comments. You could see killing and all kinds of violence and things like that. That's not being censored. But when we're trying to work on empowerment and true freedom and independence, those things are being censored. So it's like, you know, we really have to use these times to go in and reflect about how we can truly be free, how we can truly be independent.
And I think, Renee, not just in small ways, but in really big ways. I feel like the voter suppression in Kentucky that just happened, for example, is a really big example, right? You have Louisville, a big city in Kentucky, decided to, a day before the elections, close all but one voting site. That is extreme voter suppression. That is
because they know it's going to be difficult for people to get to that one, you know?
No, and it's a way to prevent Black voters from voting explicitly. And so we still have a lot of fighting to do. And with that, I want to share with folks. So yes, in the spirit of Frederick Douglass, in the spirit of Maria Felipa, we are going to continue fighting. So one of the things I wanted to share with you, Renee, I don't know if you're knowing about this yet, and folks online. So there's going to be a Black National Convention in August that the Movement for Black Lives just announced this week. And at that convention, the goal will be to ratify a Black political agenda after the Democratic and Republican National Conventions ahead of November, and strategize for electoral justice, right? As we are already seeing, there's all kinds of funky ways they are trying to prevent us from voting. So I want to share that with folks in August. This will be happening. If you want to support the Movement for Black Lives, if you want to participate, if you want to, you know, encourage others, other groups that you may know of, go ahead and go to blacknovember.org for more information on that. Movement for Black Lives is a coalition of a number of Black-led organizations in the country who have been doing organizing work for years on not only defunding the police, on various issues that affect the Black community. So it's definitely great to support and continue on that wave. And yes, Renee, so that is in the US. How about in Salvador? How can people support people who are doing the work on the ground, right? So there are two groups in Salvador who always on dois julho take advantage of the day as a day to talk about the issues that are specific to Black and Indigenous folks in the city. So one of those groups is Articulação Centro Antigo. I'll type that in for folks right now. That's their Facebook as well as their Instagram. And this is a coalition of different residents of the historic center of Salvador who are fighting against gentrification, eviction. They're fighting for land rights, for access to better education, better healthcare, and all kinds of issues, right? And it is also a space where so also on dois julho, there's a tradition of different trans performers, drag performers in the middle of the parade. They have a huge space where they also present and talk about the issues affecting the trans community. So Articulação Centro Antigo is a great organization of different coalitions. If you want to know what's going on with folks in the center of the city who are fighting against the city and the state repression of their right to exist, definitely check them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great information. And I think, so in addition, so those are just ways that we can support a collective independence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can we support our independence, like also as well, like becoming independent for ourselves, and this
help me, Renee. help us out.
And and I wanted to talk about just a couple of things that I think is so important, because this is a time that we really do have to begin to work on our independence. And how can we do that? Mm-hmm. And I can't stress this enough, but to meditate, and that's one of the big things is like when you meditate or you have a mindfulness practice, mm-hmm. it helps you with being able to be present, being conscious, being aware of what's going on around you. And so when you're able to be present and aware, you can also, and you're meditating, you have a lot of clarity. So you're able to decipher the truth. And we have to be able to know what the truth is, what's going on. Especially in this day and age, there's just so much information. We're being bombarded with so much information on the internet, on social media, in the news. And there's a lot of lies, a lot of untruths that's being told. And so, when you have that clarity of mind, it's a little bit easier to decipher what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge thing with being able to become independent. Mm-hmm. Another big one is knowing your history, like learning your history. Go ahead. Yeah, and this is why all of this information that you gave is just so important. We have to be able to know our history to be able to know who we are, who we truly are. Mm-hmm. As people, as men, women, however you see yourself. It's important to just really be able to get at that and knowing. And once you have that, the power of what we've been through and how resilient we are and how much we can fight and how creative you are, mm-hmm. then it helps us to be able to move on and gain our independence, Mm-hmm. And I have a mantra that I always say, like, it's a funny mantra, but I say a mantra to gaining independence is fuck that shit. So when you're meditating, you sit in your meditative pose and you say, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. In Portuguese, that's it. Because honestly, like a big way to be able to gain, like what holds a lot of us back is worrying about what other people think, worrying about what other people are saying about us. And when you think about Maria Quiteria, she was like, fuck that shit. Fuck being a woman. Fuck my family, my dad not wanting me to go to war. And she lied and pretended to be a man, to go to war, to go to battle, And that's huge, to be able to say, forget fuck what everybody else is saying. And I think that stops so many of us from truly being free, truly being able to do what you want, mm-hmm. from being able to say, I want to go live in Brazil. And then you're like, oh, well, okay, well, I got a job. I got to do this. I got to do that. My parents are going to think I'm crazy. My family's going to think I'm crazy. And it's like, okay, fuck that shit. Mm-hmm. But honestly, but seriously, like being able to say, okay, what kind of plans can I put in place so that I can do this? Like I have to go. And so, you know, it's like, okay, let me go within and reflect. And this is why meditation also helps, because you're going in and you're reflecting. Okay, what is it that I want from my life? What is holding me back? What's keeping me chained, imprisoned? And what can I do to get out of this? And this is why meditation helps. And this is why, for so many people, we've been in this, in quarantine. A lot of people have made good use of this quarantine to go within and reflect, to go within, do yoga, to meditate. And, and they're coming out of this with, okay, this is what I need to do to fight this battle. This is what I need to do in this revolution. This is what I need to do for me to be happy. And I think that's one of the blessings that we've gotten out of this. And
ooh, Renee, are you there? Ooh, Renee. Oh, she froze, folks.
Am I back? I think it came back on.
Yes, it came back. Yay, she's back.
It came back on. All right. Well, I was like, oh my God, we got 36 minutes in and no internet problems, no connectivity problems.
It only took 10 weeks to get to this point. But persistence is key. No, Renee, I was just listening to some of the things you were saying, and I just wanted to ask you a few questions. Because I think we talked a lot about this, collective independence and self-determination being key to who we are, right? If we think about the spirit of Maria Filipa mobilizing more than 200 Afro-descendant women and indigenous women to fight the Portuguese, I'm like, okay, they must have meditated before that. Right? And thinking about like what counts as meditation, like how do you define the sort of essential things, like what makes meditation? Because I know some people pray, some people sing, some people, what makes meditation? And then the questions that you were asking that we should ask ourselves, what's holding me back? What's making me feel imprisoned? At what point during the meditation do those questions, or should those questions come up? Like me personally speaking, as a struggling meditator, I struggle with when is the moment that these ponderings come in? When is the moment for silence and allowing those answers to arrive? So if you could just share what you think about the questions.
That's a great question. So for me, and I always tell people meditation can be many different things. It doesn't have to just be sitting in silence and fighting to quiet your thought. It could be dance. So it's really anything that you can give your 100% attention to, so you're not allowing all of the different thoughts that comes into your mind. So you can be dancing, and when you're dancing and you're doing something and you're enjoying this movement, you get outside of your thoughts, you get outside of your head, and you're completely 100% in what you're doing, in the movement that's coming. It could be cleaning. You could be cleaning, washing the dishes, and you're focusing on your breath work. You're breathing, your focus, you're giving all of your attention to that. And so when you're being mindful, and that mindfulness is there, and you're completely present at what you're doing and thinking about what you're doing, that's going into a meditative state. And I believe that, when we think about our ancestors and the different people, the different ways that they could have been doing meditations could have been, using plant medicine. So we know that there's plant medicine that we call hape. And so hape is different herbs from different trees, from the bark of the tree, different herbs that they put into tobacco. Some have tobacco, some doesn't have tobacco. That they make into like a snuff, into this powder that you snuff into your nose, and it takes you into a deep meditative state. It opens up the third eye. So one of the goals of hape is to decalcify the pineal gland so that you can open it opens up your third eye so that you can receive information. And so today we have so many things that's calcifying the pineal gland, like fluoride that's put in our water, fluoride that's put in toothpaste. And it really doesn't have a purpose, you know? And you go to the dentist, they put fluoride to brighten your teeth. But there's other ways that's natural that we can do that without using something that's harmful, that's going to calcify our pineal gland and shut down our intuitive system. You know, you can use, one of the things I love about my dentist here, she told me about, which I had already been doing. She had told me about using baking soda and hydrogen peroxide to whiten my teeth. You go to dentists in the US, they're not going to tell you that. They're just going to tell you fluoride, And so there are other things that we can do. Then there's other plant medicine. So if you watched Black Panthers, you saw them drink whenever they were going to the underworld to connect with the ancestor, to kind of basically die to get information so that they could go to this battle and fight. Well, our indigenous use that too. So here in Brazil, within Latin America, and within different countries in Africa, the different tribes had this, So here you call it ayahuasca, San Pedro, peyote, So there's these different drinks that our ancestors used before they went to battle, so they can be stronger. There's a thing that we also have. Oh, I'm losing the name, that you put in the eyes.
I don't know that one.
It's from, you put in your eyes, and it's made from potato.
The root of the potato plant, the flowers.
Yeah. Oh, if somebody's done this, tell me. I'm losing it. I forget. But it's something that it drops, you put in your eyes, and it burn like hell. I'm forgetting what you call it. But
I could do a quick Google search.
You can while I talk. Do that. So it's this. You put it in your eyes, and basically the indigenous people, they would put it on at night before they go hunting. So before they hunt. Sananga.
Yeah.
Sananga, yes. And so that's one of the things that you could use when you go into battle, you go into war, because it opens up your vision so you can have, you can see in the dark. So when you're hunting or you're at war. So these are things that our ancestors did, when going into battle. So, okay, so your question was about meditating, and I'm going off, right? Because there's so many things that's connected. But these were ways.
No, go ahead.
These were ways that you can get into meditative state. So, you can get into a meditative state, because when we would use Sananga, when I was studying shamanism, it wasn't to go to battle. It was to go into a meditative state, to see what we need to do, to see different ways that we, could heal ourselves. And then there's Kambo, or there's Bufo, which is the frog venom. So these are just different techniques, different ways. And so my point is, there's different ways to go into meditation, whether it's using plant medicine, doing capoeira, martial arts, yoga, kung fu, tai chi, qigong, dancing. When you're at home and you're cleaning, doing your chores, those are different ways to go into a meditative state, to go into a mindfulness practice. Now, the other part of your question, to answering these questions, set a time where you're just going to still your mind and just be more mindful, become aware. And then other times where you could say, okay, I want to journal, practicing of journaling and writing in a diary is also meditative. But then that's where you can go in and answer the questions and really reflect. Okay, what is it that I want out of my life? Where is it that I need to go? What do I want to do? How can I be a part of this revolution? What is my mission? What is my life's purpose? And so when you get into that state and you can write and you can journal, or you can do your mindfulness practice, information will come to you. And this is, so many times when I'm in my meditative state, things come to me. Okay, lead this meditation, do this workshop. It doesn't mean that it's going to flow easily, but the information comes, and then you have to now do your part to make sure that, that thing can come into fruition, what you what it is that you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and I think it's interesting, Renee, when we think about, you know, the idea of fighting for something, resisting something, and thinking about those questions like, what is my role? What's blocking me? I think they're very related in that we're fighting to not just survive in the world. I think we have a desire and a right to thrive, right? Like, how is it that I will thrive in the world? How is it that we can exist with purpose and with mindfulness and with safety and being respected as human beings? And so I think they're both very related. And I think what's interesting is the role that having a meditative practice has been historically in other different moments, right? Think about Malcolm X as being someone who was, you know, who would pray. He took praying very seriously. His connection to God, that was his meditation. If we think about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the movement in the South being led from the church and from this place of meditation, of prayer, right? If we think about the revolution in Haiti in 1805, the uprising and revolution that was successful, it was precursed by days of ceremony, days and days and days of ceremonies. And it almost makes me think that the space for fighting and resisting is also ceremonial in a way. You know, like whatever battle we are fighting, whether it's with our bodies physically, or whether it is on an intellectual level, whether it is in the world of language and media, there needs to be a preparation, and we also need to understand that space also as ritual and ceremony. And so when you were talking about the different medicines, right, the different technologies that are indigenous, that are African indigenous, that are, you know, the American indigenous, I think that they are tools that are there, that we, for numerous reasons, have been told are illegitimate and are not, you know, don't serve us, but they actually really do. And they're actually really key to our survival, right? Thinking about
so if you think about that, that's what helped us to win many revolutions, right? So like, so, you know, Haiti in 1804, you know, we gained our independence through that, through connecting to our roots, through connecting to the elements, through, you know, doing our type of meditation and worship, and, you know, and these women in Brazil, you know, in 1823, 1822, using poisonous plants and, you know, and different things. So when you think about it, of course, our oppressors want to say, oh no, that's evil, that's negative, that's devil worship. Don't do that, because that's the source of our power. So it's, you know, it's going back to our roots, it's going back to our power, and changing that whole idea of it being negative. And so, you know, me as an American, African American, Haitian African American woman, all of these titles, right? Growing up in the U.S., I've heard so many negative things about Haiti, voodoo, and all of this stuff. That it actually kept me away from it. Like, I didn't go into it. I didn't go deep into that. And it wasn't until I came to Brazil and going to a condomble ceremony and starting to learn what it was really about, you know, being able to be away from all of that, away from, you know, all this, the negative stuff that I'm hearing in the States. Not that they don't have it here, but, you know, it was just different because I'm coming here and I'm exploring and opening up. And I was like, wait a minute, there's nothing evil about this. There's nothing negative about this. This is very healing. And so it made me look at my culture, my Haitian culture, with different eyes. And I was like, I have to go back to Haiti now. I had been to Haiti before, but, you know, never wanted to connect to voodoo or anything like that. But I had to go back to Haiti now. And I was like, okay, now I have to go to voodoo ceremony. Now I want to learn more. Now I want to pick up books and learn more about this culture, about what this is. you know, and so, and
the
now,
spiritual independence.
yes, and this is about independence. This is about freedom, going back to our roots and studying and learning what we came from, learning these different things that helped us not only survive, but to thrive and to be powerful, because that is our power. You know, that is. And so we have to go back to these roots. And this is why it was so beautiful that Beyonce came out recently and talked about, you know, her hoodoo roots, you know, from New Orleans, and she's embracing it. You know, before she hadn't publicly embraced it. You know, when Lemonade came out, there was so much talk. These groups were saying, "Oh, she's doing evil, demon worship, devil worshiping," and you know, she didn't admit to anything. And now she's coming out and talking about what this is all about. And it's beautiful. And I think more and more now, this is us embracing and becoming freedom. This is a way of redefining our independence, connecting to our roots, and accepting it, and not being in this notion that it's evil and that it's horrible, you know?
Well, because these practices are criminalized historically, right? Like they were literally criminalized. And so we had ideas. I mean, same for me, my parents from Guatemala, whatever practices that were related to Lecumí, because Guatemala is close to Cuba, or practices that were Mayan traditional indigenous prayer and ceremony and cosmology was understood as brujeria. This is witchcraft, and you know, it's something you should fear because it's meant to hurt you, when in actuality these are knowledge systems that we have a right to, and as you said, they are integral to our own sense of independence in the world, our own sense of well-being and thriving. At least for me, it's been so definitely. I think both of us in Brazil as well have had connections with people and connections with practices that really make space for this and reinforce the importance of sustaining these practices and also letting them transform, right? Transform as people transform, as our ideas about what it means to be human transforms, to constantly always be dynamic, right? So I think there is a thing about going to our roots, but not staying there, right? It's like we go to then integrate to what now is, to what we are hoping for. So yeah.
Exactly.
Feeling great now.
So, you know,
we got this.
So, right. I haven't asked. Normally we're asking what, you know, for people to comment what you think. If anyone has any comments about any of this, if you found anything, any ways of going in to reflect, if you have any thoughts about, you know, connecting to your roots, why all of this was criminalized, please share. If you have any questions, please share as well. You know, we'd love to hear from you as well. Love to hear how do you go within to reflect? Anything that comes up for you. And again, you know,
that really, or did somebody ask that? Sorry, did you ask that question or somebody?
Yeah, I asked that.
Oh, okay, how do you go with it?
Yeah. Nobody's asked it. So I'm just asking that. And you know, so we'll give a couple of minutes just for anyone to write if you have any questions or comments or thoughts about any of that. And I just want to say again, you know, as we're giving you that time, join our, you know, check out our Patreon. I'm so excited. You know, we're going to be, you know, membership is really, you know, to support us as a fan. And the membership prices start at $3. So it's not expensive. Starts at anywhere from $3 to, I think $15 or $20, something like that. And it's really to support us, to keep us going. And you get to, you know, depending on the plan, you know, you'll get shout outs for being here, for supporting us. You'll get to see firsthand what we're going to be talking about. You'll get to see the the behind the scenes, and we'll be writing in the resources that, we're talking about here. We'll put the resources on the Patreon. So it's a good way to really support us, to keep us going, to reflect and talk about these things to help our community, as well as to continue the meditations that we're doing on Saturdays. So, we're women of color on a mission, to support other people of color.
We are. We have a lot of work to do.
Yes, a lot of work to do, and we can't do it without you. So, in this united we stand, divided we fall. So let's do this. Let's do this together. We need you as much as you need us. We all need each other, and so let's do this. So, so it seems like no one have any questions or comments. Any closing thoughts, Nefertiti?
I think it's good. I think the spirit of resistance is what these independence days mean for me. I think that's what we talked about today. I think that how we prepare to fight and resist also has to do with this personal independence that you talked about. And meditation being a starting place, I think, is great, because sometimes we feel like we need to start way up on the mountain, but it's really just like on the ground. So just want to invite anyone who's watching. We have our weekly meditation and body movement practice every Saturday. It's a free open space. Again, we want to make these practices accessible to folks of color during quarantine and pandemic. Things are starting to reopen and not open. I think that the truth is that most of our lives need to be sort of contained, for a number of reasons. And so while you're contained at home, log in. Saturdays is when we have our beautiful space. It's been really beautiful the last few weeks, holding this space for folks via Zoom. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So feel free to message me via Facebook, Instagram, email, website, frondadaprim@gmail.com. I can send you the information for the meditation on Saturday, or you can reach Nefertiti as well at Nefertiti Charlene on both Instagram or Facebook, right? On Instagram, it's Nefertiti_. You want to write it down so I can put it up in here?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And then, so you can reach me on IG at Prim. Oh, I got to update this one. Prim_Tantra. Twitter at Renée Adolphe. Facebook, Renée Adolphe. Or my website, frondadaprim.com. So you can see me there, or join us on Patreon at Red Lipstick. Let me give you Nefertiti's information so you can follow her at Nefertiti Charlene. Let's see, it's moving slow now. Moving slow.
All good. Yes, folks. So blacknovember.org, Articulação Centro Antigo, just some of the groups we named who are moving forward in that spirit of resistance, independence, self-determination here and in Brazil.
All right. Well, you see, it's not going through my text because of the internet. It's saying troubles with connection. But you see Nefertiti Charlene, her name is there. Just put an underscore.
Underscore in between. There is not another one in the world. I'm the only one.
Yes. All right. So hope to see you. Join us on Patreon at Red Lipstick Talk. Join us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and have an amazing weekend. Have a great 4th of July if you're going to go out and celebrate. Celebrate it being conscious.
Stay home, y'all. Stay home.
Stay home. But if you choose to go out and celebrate, be conscious, be aware, and wear black. So there's some people that saying to wear black instead of the red, white, and blue. So you can do that as well. But my thing is just be conscious, whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Wear a mask when you're talking to somebody.
Yeah, wear a mask.
You want your spit to be flying in the air.
Right. We don't want that. And the COVID numbers are increasing. So,
Yes.
let's do our part
Take
to
care of
decrease
each
it.
other. Yes.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Love you guys. Bye. Ciao.
Ciao,
Ciao,
ciao.
Bella.